You know that feeling when you're sure you're alone, but something in the air just feels wrong? Like the walls are listening or the silence is too perfect. That night, I learned what that feeling really means. It was 2:36 a.m. I had just come home from a late shift. I was working deliveries back then. I remember the cold air biting my face as I climbed the stairs of my apartment building, my backpack digging into my shoulder. Everything felt normal until I reached my door. The lock was turned, not broken, just unlocked. I froze. My stomach dropped like a stone. Because I knew. I double-checked it before leaving. Always did. At first I just stood there, key halfway in the lock, trying to rationalize it. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I'd forgotten. But my hand was shaking because something deep inside me already knew. I didn't forget. I pushed the door open. The hinges creaked louder than usual. The air inside was still. No sound. Everything looked exactly how I'd left it. Shoes by the door, TV remote on the couch, takeout container on the counter. But the air felt wrong, like someone had just been there. You know that faint warmth that lingers in a room after someone leaves? It had that. I stepped inside, locked the door, and went straight to my bedroom. Checked the closet, under the bed, even the shower. Nothing. So I told myself I was being paranoid, took a shower, brushed my teeth, and crawled into bed. That's when I heard it. A breath, a slow, shaky exhale, coming from the direction of the front door. At first I thought maybe it was my own breathing echoing, but then it happened again. Steady, human, too close. I sat up in bed, every nerve in my body locked tight. The room was dark except for the orange glow from the street lamp outside. I listened. Seconds passed. Then I heard a metallic click, the sound of my door handle, moving. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The handle twitched again, softly, then a slow rattle. Someone was out there. My phone was across the room, plugged in. So I just stayed still, watching the dark outline of my door through the open bedroom doorway. The sound stopped. Silence. I waited, maybe a full minute, then slipped out of bed, walking barefoot across the floor. Each board creaked louder than the last. When I finally reached the door, I pressed my ear against it. Nothing. Just the hum of the hallway lights. I wanted to check the peephole, but part of me was terrified of what I might see. Still, I leaned forward and looked. Nobody. Empty hallway, pale yellow light flickering at the end. I stood there for another minute, trying to calm down, before finally locking the deadbolt again. That's when I realized the chain lock was already hooked, meaning it had been unlocked from the inside. I slept with the lights on that night. Barely slept, honestly. When I woke up around 9 a.m., sunlight spilling through the blinds, I felt stupid. Maybe it was a drunk neighbor. Maybe I imagined the sound. That's what I told myself while brushing my teeth, trying to shake it off. But later that afternoon, I came home from grabbing groceries, and I noticed something. There were fingerprints on the inside of my front door, right beside the handle. They were dark, smudged, like someone had pressed their hand there and slid it down slowly. I tried wiping them away, but they left faint streaks that wouldn't come off. I called my landlord, told him someone might have tried to break in. He came by, checked the locks, even replaced the latch, said everything looked fine. But that night I heard it again, the breathing. This time it wasn't at the door. It was right behind my bedroom wall, the one that connects to the hallway. I didn't check. I didn't move. I just sat there in the dark, gripping the sheets, listening to the air move through the wall like lungs. And when it finally stopped, I heard footsteps, slow, careful, walking away. The next morning, I packed a bag and slept at my friend's place. Told him I needed a break from work stress. I didn't tell him about the breathing. A few days later, the building maintenance guy stopped by to fix something in the hallway ceiling. He mentioned that the crawl space above my unit connected straight over my front door. said a homeless man had been sneaking into the vents on and off for weeks. They'd found a blanket, some food wrappers, and a broken flashlight up there. He told me not to worry. They'd taken care of it, but I never went back. The apartment's still listed online. Same unit, same pictures. I looked it up a few months ago out of curiosity, and in one of the listing photos, there's a faint outline, like a handprint, right on the inside of the front door. I don't know what's worse, that someone was really there that night, or that maybe they never actually left. You ever drive at night and suddenly realize you haven't passed another car for miles? That kind of quiet that feels almost too quiet, where the world outside your windshield looks frozen in time. That's what it was like that night. I was 24, driving home from college for the weekend. 2 hours straight shot down Route 9, a rural highway that cut through endless woods and farmland. I'd done it dozens of times. Same playlists, same coffee in the cup holder, same gas station halfway through. But that night, everything felt different. I remember the time exactly, 11:42 p.m. The digital clock on my dashboard glowed red against the darkness. Fog had started to roll in thick from the fields. My high beams just bounced it back, so it felt like I was driving inside a tunnel of light. I turned down the radio to focus on the road. The tires hummed over the asphalt, that low, steady sound that starts to feel hypnotic after a while. And then, without touching the dial, the radio crackled. It wasn't just static. There were shapes to it, a rhythm. It sounded like breathing. At first, I thought maybe it was interference from a tower or a truck's CB radio nearby. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, there were no headlights, just the darkness. I leaned closer, trying to make out the words under the static, and I swear, I heard my name. I blinked hard, laughed it off. I'd been up since 6 that morning, probably just tired. I switched to another station. Static, I switched again. Same thing. All static, all frequencies. Then suddenly, the radio cut completely. Just silence. That's when I saw it. A car. Far behind me at first, just a faint shape in the fog. No headlights. At first, I thought maybe it was parked on the shoulder. But as I squinted, I realized it was moving, keeping pace with me. I told myself it was nothing, a trick of the fog, maybe another driver with their lights off. But then I changed lanes, and the shape did too, perfectly. That was the first time I felt it, that primal fear, the one that crawls up your spine before your brain catches up. I sped up to 70. The car did too. I slowed to 50. It matched me. I was completely alone on that stretch. No exits, no lights, just the endless black of Route 9. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel. I looked at my phone on the passenger seat. No signal. 0 bars. The static rose again, sharp and distorted, and underneath it, a whisper. It was faint at first, then clearer. Don't stop. My heart slammed against my ribs. I looked down at the radio, then back up. The car behind me was closer now, maybe 20 yards back. I could see the faint red glow of something inside. It flickered, like the end of a cigarette, or maybe a phone screen lighting up. But I never saw a driver. I thought about pulling over at the next rest stop, but there wasn't one for miles. And that voice, that one line from the radio, just kept looping in my head. Don't stop! I drove like that for another 10 minutes. Every second stretching longer than the last. The fog thickened, the static pulsing in and out. Then just as suddenly as it began, the car was gone. I blinked, looked again. The road behind me was empty. No taillights, no shadow, just black. For a second, I thought maybe it had pulled off, but there were no turnoffs, just miles of open road. I drove the rest of the way home in complete silence. Didn't even look at the radio again. When I finally pulled into the diner near my hometown, 12:57 a.m., I was still shaking. The waitress came over with a tired smile. She said I looked pale and asked if I was okay. I told her I thought someone was following me. She stopped pouring my coffee and said, "You were on Route 9, weren't you?" Her tone changed completely. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. "You're the third person this month to come in saying that." I asked what she meant, but she just shook her head and walked away. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. The next morning, I went to my car to drive to my parents' house, and there were handprints, smeared into the dust on my back windshield. 2 of them, perfectly placed, like someone had been holding on from behind. I tried to tell myself they'd been there before. Maybe a friend, maybe kids at a gas station. But when I wiped them off, there was another print, faint, oily, on the inside of the rear window. I didn't say anything to my parents, just told them I was tired from the drive. A week later, out of curiosity, I Googled Route 9 static radio. There were a few old forum posts, people describing the same thing. The whisper, the car with no lights, the voice saying, "Don't stop." One post was from a guy who said he stopped anyway. He'd pulled over near mile marker 87 to check his tires. Someone found his car 2 days later. Doors open, engine running, driver's seat empty. Every time I think about that drive, I remember something small. When the radio first cut to static, the dashboard clock flickered. Just for a second, the time glitched, from 11:42 to 11:43, back and forth like it was stuck. I didn't notice it then, but when I reached the diner, the clock still said 11:42. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe I imagined it. But sometimes when I'm driving at night, when the road gets too quiet and the radio starts to hiss, I hear that whisper again, faint, right behind the static. "Don't stop." It's strange the way sound travels at night. You start noticing things you never would during the day. The hum of the fridge, pipes settling, distant footsteps that might not even exist. But that night, the sound came from across the hall, from a room that should have been empty. I was 24 then, renting a small 2-bedroom apartment in the city, nothing fancy. Thin walls, flickering hallway lights, that old apartment smell you can never quite describe. My roommate, Chris, had moved out a few weeks earlier, leaving the second room completely empty. I remember he left because of weird noises. I laughed it off back then. I thought he was just making an excuse to move in with his girlfriend. But after he left, the noises started for me too. It began small, a door hinge creaking when no one was home, a drawer clicking shut, soft shuffling late at night. I figured it was the building settling, or rats in the walls. It's an old place after all. But then one night it got louder, clearer, closer. It was around 12:47 a.m. I was sitting on my bed scrolling through my phone when I heard it. This slow, dragging sound, like fabric being pulled across the floor. I muted my phone and listened. It was coming from the other room, Chris's old room. I froze, because no one had been in there for weeks. After a minute, I got up and stepped into the hallway. The apartment was quiet again, the kind of silence that buzzes in your ears. I just stood there, staring at that closed door. I remember my hand hovering over the doorknob, my heart pounding. I told myself I'd open it, just to prove to myself it was nothing, but I didn't. I went back to my room and shut the door. The next morning I checked. Everything was normal. Empty room, bare walls. The only thing inside was a faint smell of dust and old wood. I told myself maybe it was air pressure or the pipes. It had to be. But that same night, it happened again. This time it wasn't dragging. It was footsteps. Slow, uneven, like someone pacing. I didn't even move from my bed. I just stared at my ceiling, trying to breathe quietly. The footsteps went on for almost a full minute, then stopped. A few seconds later, I heard the faint click of the door handle. That was when I realized something. The door to that room didn't lock. I got up and pressed my ear against my own door. Nothing. Just silence again. But then came a soft knock. 3 taps. On my door. I didn't open it. I couldn't. I just sat on the floor all night, staring at the crack under the door, waiting for something to move on the other side. When morning came, I called my landlord, told him someone might have gotten into the apartment. He came over that afternoon, checked the locks, windows, even the fire escape. Everything was perfectly secure. He told me it was probably just the neighbors. But my apartment was at the end of the hall. There were no neighbors on that side. He left. And that night I decided to record. I set my phone on video, facing the empty room door, and went to bed with the lights off. I didn't sleep much. Around 2 a.m., I heard the door creak open. I froze under my blanket. I could hear slow, deliberate footsteps in the hallway again. I didn't dare move. After maybe a minute, it went silent again. I must have fallen asleep from exhaustion after that, because the next thing I remember was sunlight through my window. The first thing I did was grab my phone. The battery had died, but it had recorded 2 hours of video before it did. I scrolled through it, fast-forwarding most of the dark footage. Nothing happened for a while. Then around 1:53 a.m., the door across the hall slowly opened on its own. I paused the video. My stomach twisted. A shadow fell across the hallway floor. It wasn't mine. It wasn't shaped like a person either. More like someone crouching, too low, too still. Then for a few seconds, the screen went completely black, as if something passed right in front of the camera. When the video came back, the door was closed again. That was it. No sound, no movement. Just that. I didn't know what to do with it. I deleted the video. I don't even know why. Maybe I didn't want to believe it. Maybe I didn't want proof. The next few days were quiet. I even started to relax again, thinking maybe whatever it was had passed. But one night, a few days later, I woke up to my phone vibrating. An unknown number. I answered half asleep. There was breathing on the other end, slow, ragged, then a whisper. "Don't close the door." I hung up immediately. I remember staring at my phone screen, my reflection faintly visible. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped it. When I finally picked it up again, the call log was blank. No number, no record. The next morning, I packed some things and stayed with a friend for a few days. When I came back, something felt different. The air in the apartment was heavy. The door to the second room was slightly open. Even though I'd shut it before leaving, I tried to ignore it. I really did. I started sleeping on the couch instead, keeping all the lights on. But the noise came again. Footsteps, sometimes whispers, and each time they were closer. The last night I spent there, I heard someone breathing behind the door while I was on the couch, just standing there, breathing. I sat frozen for what felt like hours until it stopped in the morning. I left for good. I didn't even take most of my stuff. I just locked the door, left the keys on the counter, and walked out. A week later, I got a message from my landlord saying a new tenant had already moved in. Out of curiosity, I texted to ask if everything was okay. He said he moved out after 2 nights, said he didn't like the sound of footsteps. I never went back, but sometimes, when I'm lying in bed late at night, I still think about that video, the shadow that wasn't mine, and I wonder, if I had let the camera keep recording, would it have shown what opened the door, or who?